So we're so thrilled to bring this next guest to the Rail Talk studio, former Kentucky State Senator. He's a consultant. He's a bourbon aficionado. He's a racehorse owner, and I think breeder as well. Damon Thayer, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back.
Oh man, so glad to have you. And you and John did a great job, obviously, with the fighting the Florida decoupling bill, and it was great to have you give that update last time. So there are wheels in motion. I saw that the Stronach Group has sued to try to get the law struck down that basically exempted. They basically said that all wagering houses had to have a certain amount of live dates in order to have slot machines. That was all taken away except for the Florida thoroughbred track. So Gulfstream is trying to sue and get that struck down as unconstitutional. I probably did a poor job of explaining it, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about this lawsuit? Does this change anything?
It's hard to say. Yes, Gulfstream Park is suing because they're saying that since greyhound racing and harness racing were allowed to decouple, that it's unconstitutional for Gulfstream Park to have to be coupled. I think it's a little bit rich, actually, to be lectured by Gulfstream Park, which is owned by a Canadian company, to lecture us about the Constitution. But I think it's a Hail Mary pass on their part. Look, they were 3-5 to get decoupling done in this most recent session of their legislature. We were 50-1 when Thoroughbred Racing Initiative tried, when we came on the scene in February. We were the late closer who got up in the shadow of the wire to win the decoupling battle by a nose. And I think it probably took Gulfstream Park by surprise. They had the skids pretty greased in Tallahassee. I mean, we found out that in the months prior to that legislative session, Gulfstream Park handed out over $300,000 worth of campaign checks in Tallahassee to try to get their way. So I think this lawsuit is probably a Hail Mary on their part. I was happy to see that the court allowed the Florida HPPA to intervene. The Florida HPPA is a part of our coalition at TRI. We work with Jay Engel, their general counsel, who is a terrific equine attorney based up here in central Kentucky. So I see and talk to Jay about this all the time. And then, of course, the president of the Florida HPPA, Chester Bishop, is a terrific guy, and he's a battler too. So I think that's a good sign that the court allowed the HPPA to intervene. They have standing because they are actually named in statute. TRI is going to continue to monitor the situation. We don't necessarily, as an association, not named in a statute like the FHBPA, we may want to come on later onto the scene if allowed to join the case. But right now we're sort of letting the Florida HPPA lead the way on that. So I'm not really sure how it's going to play out because the court's not even going to hear it until January. And the legislative session this year starts in January, whereas last year it started later in the year. So it might just be them trying to throw some stuff up against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, and Damon, for our listeners at home that maybe weren't around for the first round of this fight, let's take a step back and get into a little bit of the meat and potatoes of the argument. Basically, it sounds like, and the reason why we established the Thoroughbred Racing Initiative is that we wanted to fight decoupling on a state level and basically not allow it to be a precedent for the rest of the industry, which my thinking is if Florida domino topples, then there's Kentucky and Arkansas and some of the other states next where they go, aha, okay, now we have a blueprint. So how important is this fight to the industry, even though it's technically right now regionally just in Florida?
You're right. It's critical to maintain the current coupled racing and gaming situation in Florida. It's critical for Florida, but you are absolutely right. Use whatever analogy you want. If decoupling were able to pass in Florida, you could see a domino effect, the camel's nose under the tent, the cascading effect, all the things we use in legislative talk about bills like this that can set a precedent. So we built rather quickly a coalition to stand up to Gulfstream Park and defeat the decoupling bill. But that was one battle. It's certainly the racing industry won, Gulfstream Park 0, but they're gearing up for another battle. Our lobbyists in Tallahassee, by the way, we have one of the most powerful and influential lobby teams in Tallahassee. They've really got their finger on the pulse, and they say that the word on the street is Gulfstream Park is doing the same thing that they did last time. They're making campaign contributions. They're kind of tipping their hand that they want to try to pass decoupling again, either as a standalone bill or to try to get it stuck into something late in the session, which is why I was at the Kentucky Oaks on a muddy spring Kentucky day, texting and talking to our lobby team, because that was the last day of the session in Tallahassee. And that's when I got the message, was sitting in my seat at Churchill Downs, and I got the text saying decoupling is dead for this session. So, I mean, it's a long drawn out process. We thought we had the bill dead to rights a few weeks earlier in committee when Senator Jason Broder did not call it, despite the fact that it was posted. He, as chairman, exercised his right and did not call the bill. We were all there that day. It was an exciting day. But, you have to be vigilant, and we were right until the end. And it was a really big deal. It sort of got lost in the hubbub of the Triple Crown season. It felt like we got more attention from the racing industry media, except for Rail Talk, of course, which covered it afterwards. But everybody was so caught up with the Triple Crown that we didn't get as much coverage. It was a really big victory. I mean, you talk about David versus Goliath, and it's something that we should be proud of. But this year, we're not going to get caught on the back foot. I mean, I went back and checked my records. It was early February when Mark Massey called me and said, "Hey, we're putting together a group. Can you come help us in Florida?" And now, we've been preparing all year long. And I was in Ocala last week. As a matter of fact, guys, 1 week ago today, I was in Ocala at the Cassie Training Center, and I checked up on Ewing and Sandman. And by the way, there are few better places for horses to be than the Cassie Training Center in Ocala. That place is unbelievable. I went down.
Damon, don't get horses involved in this podcast. This is a political podcast, so let's not mix messages. But I do want to jump in though for a second, because you mentioned Jason Broder. And, for the first 6 months that we talked, I was calling him, Brodeur, after our famed Hall of Fame goalie up here in New Jersey. But Jason Broder had a very influential, part of this play. And now, fast forward to last week where, we hosted a fundraiser at OBS, for his candidacy. Tell us a little bit about the importance of our relationship with Jason Broder and how people can contribute not only to him, but also to the Thoroughbred Racing Initiative.
Yeah. So look, the Gulfstream Park is very political. They've got a team of lobbyists. They stroke a lot of checks to campaigns. And at the Thoroughbred Racing Initiative, we decided we're going to get political. I mean, you've got to fight fire with fire. We can't sit back and say, we're not going to make campaign contributions. We have to do that. I wrote a check myself to Senator Broder. It's important in politics to support those who support you. So a week ago last night, we had a big fundraiser for Senator Broder at OBS, and we had a big crowd in there. Trust me, after being in elected politics for nearly a quarter century, there are two things a politician wants to see when he or she walks in a room: a basket full of checks and a room full of people. And we had both of those for Senator Broder last week in Ocala. You've got to be able to fight fire with fire. And TRI is allowed under Florida law to make campaign contributions. We're going to do that. Senator Broder was the first legislative campaign that we've contributed to, but we're going to look at some of our other friends and do the same before the session starts. I think it's important for us to show that we can support our friends. Mm-hmm. We're grateful for what he did. He took a bold stand for us that day when he declined to hear that bill in his committee. And we wanted to thank him for that. But B, we also want to keep him on our side going forward. And it was a great opportunity for him to learn even more about our industry. He lives in Sanford, over near Orlando. He and his wife, Christy, drove over. They got there early. They stayed late. Tom Ventura, the amazing president of Ocala Breeder Sales, took him on a tour of the barn area, which was full of yearlings for the next day's yearling sale. Francis Van Landenbach, who's I believe the chair of OBS right now, he identified a nice, calm yearling, and Senator Broder and his wife Christy were able to go in the stall and spend some time with the yearling. They had some practice because they came up to Kentucky back in June and visited Justify and American Pharoah at Ashford Stud. And they quickly learned that you can approach American Pharoah and give him a nice pat on the neck, but that you better give Justify a wide berth. So we're talking about that. And so they really got to see how the sales worked. And they were able to talk with, we had like 30 people there in that video room at OBS. They stayed and talked and answered questions and asked questions. And he understands our industry in Florida, and it's 33,000 jobs and it's $3.4 billion economic impact. We're going to continue to tell that story in Tallahassee to legislators who are willing to listen. And I think, last Monday night at OBS it wasn't highly publicized. We didn't talk about it on social media, but it was a big night for our industry coalition, because we showed that not only can we tell the story and get the messaging out there, but also that we can build relationships and we can be political too. And this is a political campaign. This is a political battle. And people need to understand, in their home states or in Florida, you need to be political if you want to help save horse racing in your state, because horse racing is legalized by statute. State legislators can take away what they give, and it's regulated by the state. So you can go to our website, Thoroughbred Racing Initiative, and there's a way to contribute on there if you want to help us. We're getting geared up for the next legislative session, and we're not going to back down, and we're ready for the battle one more time.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's what we need, is that kind of organization and that kind of unity and that kind of strength on the political side. So I'm glad you guys are providing that. One other question from me, just because people ask me this about the future of racing in Florida as a whole, in terms of where it's going to be situated. Because ultimately, if you have an operator that is not interested in running racing, you're kind of going to be coming up against this brick wall over and over again. You're able to beat it in the short term, but long term, you need an alternative plan. So I've heard several things floated: Ocala, Tampa, Palm Meadows. Where are you guys at on that discussion? That, assuming you are able to hold off decoupling for the next 5-10 years, however many it may be, where do we go to shift racing away from an operator that has no interest in running races?
Well, that's a great question. I'll take the first part and then toss it over to John as vice president of TRI and what he's been working on. So, right, you're absolutely right. We have a disinterested operator. We want to defeat decoupling. We need to buy some time. That's our number one goal. But we have 3 willing buyers for Gulfstream Park. One of them is public, and that's Mike Rapoli. And then there are 2 others who I probably shouldn't name publicly, but they're interested in buying Gulfstream Park as a racetrack under the current coupled ball. And Belinda Stronach has shown no interest in selling to them. So, we've got to be able to plan for the future and tell legislators that we are planning for the future. So we have commissioned a feasibility study for Florida racing. I have my own opinions. I think we have to save racing in South Florida because we, as an industry, we can't afford to continue losing racing in these big markets. We've lost Detroit, where I got my start. We lost Portland. We lost Boston. We lost Omaha.
Chicago.
We could be losing Chicago. I mean, there's not much left. And unless they decide to build that casino up there, I don't know how Hawthorne can go on. We've lost San Francisco. We're going to lose Washington, D.C. when Laurel closes in a couple of years and all the Maryland racing shifts to Baltimore at Pimlico. It's, to make new fans, to bet via simulcast, to bet via ADW, we all became fans because we went to a live race, and we need live racing in these large markets. Having said that, we could conduct a race meet in Ocala at OBS. I was there and looked at it's a very nice mile track. You've all seen the 2-year-old Breeze shows there. But we would need a purse supplement. We've got to have a way to put up reasonable purses. And there are lots of options out there. I love Tampa Bay Downs. It's one of my favorite tracks. My grandfather used to take me there when I was a kid. They were snowbirds from Michigan. So that's part of my racetrack fan story. But to me, we've got to have racing in South Florida, whether it's Gulfstream or Hialeah or someplace new. I think Palm Meadows is a long shot. I don't think we could ever race there because of the covenants that Frank Stronach signed when he built that place as a training center. There are ingress and egress problems, and the local community does not want that place to be a live racing facility. So John, on behalf of Tri, has been working with the feasibility study folks, and we're going to be releasing it eventually, but he can talk a little bit about the details and where we're headed.
Yeah, and thank you, Damon. Not to get too far into the weeds because it is still draft copy and kind of a work in progress. But Joe, I'm happy to report that there are 4 what I would call very realistic options to race in the Sunshine State. There's a 5th that's kind of a flyer long shot. But look, we were a flyer long shot to defeat Stronach and decoupling in the first place. So you have to exhaust all options. The thing that I like about the report is over 150 pages, and it's chock full of details and information, not only about racing but also about the demographics of different regions of the state of Florida. But it goes into great depth of what the realistic options are, how much it's going to cost. If we start from scratch on certain areas, what that cost is going to be. If we have existing race facilities in place and we just need to dovetail the parimutuel side of it and maybe a clubhouse or maybe a paddock or a test barn. There's all kinds of options that'll be coming out, in the coming weeks. But Damon and the group at Thoroughbred Racing Initiative need to fine tune it a little bit more before we actually, open it up to everybody to see what the options are. But I was really pleased to see, just the depth of the information on this feasibility study. And just as a tease, there's a lot of options, one of which is to publicly finance an opportunity in Florida and have the industry leaders build or buy and build a facility as well. So it could be, as crazy as it sounds, it could be an industry-wide opportunity for some non-Floridians to come in and invest money into land in Florida. If you build it, they will come, just like they did at Kentucky Downs. And through the leadership of Tri and Damon, have an opportunity to literally invest in your future.
Yeah, no, I mean, well said. That's awesome. I'm excited to see that study.
The one thing
yeah, go ahead.
I also want to bring up, guys, is it's not just about Florida breeding and Florida racing.
Right.
Those are 2 critical components of a massive ecosystem. Yeah. We all read about the $500 million worth of yearlings sold here at Keeneland last month. I think DJ Stable bought about 10% of them. I mean, hey,
hardly, but yeah.
But 80% of those yearlings are now in Ocala, Florida, getting their pre-training. I am an investor in CJ Thoroughbreds. We bought a full sister to Darth Vader for $500,000. We're partners with John Ropes on her, so we own 50% of her. And I got to see her last week at Ocala Stud. Michael Farrell took me on a tour of the place. I got to see where Forte and Fierceness got their early training. And I got to see the horse that I own a piece of. She went immediately from Keeneland to Ocala, along with thousands of others, literally thousands of horses. So there's this ecosystem in Florida that supports racing, not only in the United States, but across this entire continent into Canada. And we have to preserve that. So it's breeding, it's racing, it's pre-training, it's boarding. It is such a critical piece in the puzzle that makes up the ecosystem of North American racing, breeding, and training. And we've got to save it. I was glad to get down there last week. I went to OBS. I went to Ocala Stud. I went to Cassie Training Center. I went to the Smoothie King and got my smoothie. It was a great trip. Flew into the lovely Gainesville Airport, had a nice drive down I-75. My first time ever in Ocala, and I can see why it's so special. I get it. I stood there on Mark Cassie's platform overlooking his training track with a dual Hall of Fame trainer, and I looked around and thought to myself, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Yep. We have to preserve this.
Yeah, no doubt. And it really is the best place to raise horses in the winter. You know, West Point we have our little yearling showcase that it's not little. We have like 50 horses that we bring out for the partners first weekend in December. And I struggle to think of anywhere else we could do something like that time of year than one of those beautiful farms. Right. And yeah, it's a great point that you make that it's Florida, and Florida racing and breeding is only one piece of the puzzle here. The yearling prep, the sales, like everything else that goes into it, it branches out to so many other states when these horses eventually get onto the track for their racing career. It is crucial. It's a crucial artery in this system, and I'm so glad that you guys are fighting to preserve it. John, anything else?
No, I think just to put a bow on it, Joe, you guys hit the nail on the head that it's not just a regional fight. It's not a situation where, if racing fails in Florida, then we still have all these other states. It is such a vital role in the industry and $3.2 billion industry in the state of Florida. But there's ripple effects, like Damon just mentioned. 80% of the horses, yearlings, train and get prepared for their racing careers in Florida. The breeding industry, the snowbird, and there's so much intertwined with the horse industry in Florida regionally that affect and reverberate throughout the entire industry, that it's not just a regional fight. And if you want to donate time, energies, or money to the fight, we like to think that we're the tip of the spear. And that's one of Damon's, famous sayings. That one and the other saying that I learned from Damon is we're in a knife fight. And you need to be strategic and calculating and don't give up the fight. And we did it the first round, and we did it with a lot of heavy lifting. And now we have an organization in place to help guide the energies in the fight. But it still comes down to the money that fuels the fire. And again, I'm going to throw up there thoroughbredracinginitiative.com at the bottom of the screen if you want to donate. And Damon, if we want to have people donate directly to Jason and his cause, what's the best way to do that?
He has two campaign funds. You can look them up online. One is Jason Broder for State Senate, and the other one is called Citizens for Solutions. And both of those under Florida law can raise money and spend it on Senator Broder. And one thing about him, Republicans have supermajorities in Florida. Senator Broder is a Republican, and there's only two sort of purple districts that the Republicans are defending in Florida next year. Purple means it's not red Republican, it's not blue Democrat, it's kind of swing, like 51-49 Republican Democrat. And Senator Broder is in one of those two districts, which that's another reason why it was important for us to make an early statement that we're going to back him in his reelection, because he's been so important to us and has such a deep understanding of our industry. Trust me, guys, we have to have advocates in every state where we have horse racing. We have to have legislative advocates, people who are ready to step up to the plate and swing for the fences for us. And Jason Broder is one of those. Stan McClain, who represents Ocala, Danny Burgess, Jim Boyd, the incoming Senate president. These are the senators we're going to be working with to try to kill this bill again this year.
Thanks for all the info and all the fight, Damon. It's always great having you on the show. Appreciate the updates. And yeah, keep doing the good work. Thanks for the time, brother.
Can't wait to come back sometime and report on this feasibility study that John's.
Yeah.
That's going to be pretty exciting.
Please do. Yeah, we'd love to hear it.